Hi, I'm Alicia Michelle, best-selling author, ICF certified coach, and neurocoach. I love helping Christian women discover practical ways to manage emotions with science and scripture so they can live with more calm, more clarity, more confidence. I'm so glad you're here. Find a cozy spot and let's get started. Hello there. Welcome to another episode of the Christian Mindset Coach with me, Alicia Michelle. We've been talking about people pleasing the last few weeks here, and I wanted to take an episode to share what my story has been like in this area. And I'm going to share it from a different angle than maybe people do sometimes. I'm going to share what people pleasing has been like for me over the years, where it started, what my journey has been like. What also is interesting about the journey of any sort of healing is not just where we've been and how God has changed us, but where we are now and what it's like to live in the maintenance side of things. Because I think anyone who promises you that you're never going to have a problem again or ever deal with anything like this again, if you go through their thing, is just either not realistic or not telling you the full truth. That's pretty blunt to say it like that. But I want you to know that I have struggled with people pleasing most of my life. And I can honestly say that I feel like I have been healed in a lot of ways from it, but that there are things in this maintenance side of it that God is still requiring me to keep an eye on and to keep working on. Almost in the same way like someone is an alcoholic. They can struggle with alcoholism for a long time, but when they're in their recovery stage, they still have to pay attention to it. They still have to listen to those promptings to want to drink. And, well, why do I want to drink right now? And do I want to make that decision? It's still a maintenance process. And so, yes, we're going to share the big picture journey, but I want you to know what it's like on the other side. So first, I want to just say that healing isn't a place to arrive at. It is not perfection. It's learning how to be in a situation where I would have been normally a people pleaser and learning how to return back to safety in a healthy way so that I don't make that decision. That's what the healing side of it looks for me now, is not being away from the temptation to do it because it's everywhere, but it is saying, I know how to understand what it's about and I know how to return to safety, and I'm not caught up in that anymore. When I was really caught up in people pleasing for years and years, starting when I was a child through my teen years, and I'll get into some of that in a minute, the real issue was fear. Fear that someone would leave, fear that I would be not heard or seen. Ultimately, I guess the fear was abandonment, that I would be left alone. And there are some very real reasons why I felt that way, some childhood patterns, some things that happened to me, but understanding that and healing from that has been huge. Now, as I'm moving into different stages in my life where I am moving to where I'm an empty nester with my kids. I have 4 kids. One of them has left the house. 2 more are leaving this summer, and the dynamics change. And so for me, people pleasing tends to come up in these areas of a more subtle way. It's not necessarily about fear of abandonment anymore. It's overanalyzing a situation or being hyper responsible or trying to see, like, where is my line in this? These moments of transition are the times when these old patterns can tend to flare up again, because we had things figured out, so to speak. We knew what to do when we were in those situations, but as our kids change and get older, parenting changes. I'm sure you know this if you're a parent of maybe young adults or even older children. And the roles of what I'm responsible for, how I'm supposed to respond, how I'm supposed to deal with the emotions I see them struggling with, that's all different than when they were babies. And figuring out that new normal, there is that temptation to go back to that old bridge, so to speak, of how I dealt with the needs that they had, like wanting to just step in and help them. Now I notice I'm not wanting to do it from a sense of even helping them in a right way. I have to pay attention to those times when I want to help them because I'm trying hard to hold on to them so that I don't feel like they're abandoning me. That's a very, very deep concept, and I'll unplug that a little bit more. But some of it now for me looks like staying alert for all of these things that in the past, if I was trying to be overly alert, I was trying to keep myself safe from being abandoned or left behind. And so we have to be careful always that when we're having this as our background, people pleasing, that there is a desire to love and to just be excited for all the things that are going on and caring deeply, wanting to be involved. And that's normal, that's good. But am I doing it from the motive of my relationship with you is now different and I need to figure out a new way for me to feel close to you? If it's like, oh, I'm doing this out of desperation to not be abandoned, then that's not a right motive to love a child in a certain way or help them in a certain way. So that for me, the nervous system, it's like my nervous system gets stuck in this vigilance. As a younger mom, that was a great trait to have, is to be able to see what's going on in the landscape for my kids, what's going on in the landscape of my life, my marriage, all still great things. But when you're handing the reins over to adult children, the vigilance needs to pass to them as well. And I can get in the way of their own development, and I can find myself making decisions from incorrect motives if I am trying to be super vigilant. And that's kind of the moral of the story of people pleasing, isn't it? That people pleasing isn't really about being nice. It really is about safety, about belonging, about protection, about emotional survival, about feeling valuable through usefulness or feeling secure through vigilance. That's the core of it. And so in the maintenance side, that's the part that I am still working on. So let me back up and say, here's how it formed in my life, people pleasing. This is why it's a pattern for me. From as long as I can remember, I was always the good girl. I was the one who got good grades, who achieved, who didn't upset the system, so to speak, where there was other things that were dysfunctional or chaotic around me. I was the one who just wanted to be in the corner and not be a problem. And then part of that is just how I am wired as a person. I really, really like peace and I really like following the rules. It's just how God made me. And so for me, following the rules, keeping the peace made me feel good. And that in itself is not bad, but it was like I couldn't be anything but that. And so I learned that when I was those things, I was not the one causing the tension, and I was also more appreciated by others. Now, families, they have language and rules, don't they? They have not just rules of how things operate, but they have roles. It's interesting. My daughter recently went to go visit another family of a young man that she's dating and who's she's serious about. She went to go visit his parents and his family, and she had said, Mom, just being here, it's so different from being in our house. And she's like, it's not bad. Like our house is bad and their house is good, or vice versa. It's just different. And it got me thinking again about how my home with my husband and the home that I've created is different than the home that I grew up in or the home that my husband grew up in. Each family has their own culture. Each person kind of plays their own role. This person is the person who calms everyone down. This person is the cheerful one or the funny one. I think we have to be very careful about the roles that we play in families because we can live up to those. And so that's good to live up to a role in a family if it's healthy. But when we get into these cycles of, I'm not allowed to say that, I'm just supposed to keep everyone happy, then what happens to what God wants us to be in terms of our identity? Are we able to be our full selves? And for some of us, that's not possible, just to be completely blunt. Some of us come from such dysfunction in our past, in our families, that we can't be vulnerable enough to share who we really are. So we have to be careful about what is safe to share. But knowing that those roles exist helps us to better understand some of the reasons why these patterns of love and attachment and worth can be formed and can become these people-pleasing patterns. There's 3 questions that the brain has to answer by the time we are between the ages of 9 to 11. This is every human, and it's not done cognitively. It's done in this quiet response sort of way by the brain, like experiential sort of way. The 3 questions are, am I loved? Am I worthy? And am I enough? And how the brain answers that sets the pattern going forward for our identity. There are other questions in there, of course, but those are some pretty key ones that I see that come up a lot. So when a woman comes to me in coaching and says, I don't know why I always feel like I have to prove myself to others, or why can't I just say no to that work project? I know that it's not defining my worth. A lot of times there are these patterns that have been there, that have been set up. And for people pleasing, a lot of it is around safety. And we, thankfully, by the grace of God, even as young children, have this innate ability to know how to survive, don't we? To know how to calm ourselves, even if we have no clue what that means because we're young. We have this somehow primal understanding of, if I just do this, then I can keep the peace. And that keeps us, when we're in that survival mode, that keeps our body in a place of survival as well. That means that the sympathetic nervous system is on. That means that we're not necessarily as connected to our logical side of our brain. The logical side is on the prefrontal cortex, but it's being overruled a lot of times by the amygdala and by these other parts of the survival part of our mind. We're hyper alert. We're scanning for danger. We're constantly reading emotional environments. And that's how I was. I didn't realize it then. That was how my brain figured that out. And I don't mean like I have a smart brain and you don't. I mean, everybody has a very smart brain to figure that out. But that's how my brain figured out how to deal with some of what I was experiencing. And I think it's important to note this. This came up today. I was talking about this issue of people pleasing in the Emotional Confidence Club with the group of ladies there. And several of them had mentioned that they grew up in homes where one of them shared that her mom was a single mom and she had 2 other siblings. And her mom was trying to deal with some of the troubles that these other kids would get into. And so she, this woman in the club, she was the one who was the good girl. She was the one who didn't cause problems. And in her mind, that was how she was just trying to fit in and to feel loved. That was her position. And we have to go, okay, that's not necessarily a mother who's being abusive or difficult. The mother was doing what she could to get through. And we have to come to that terms of we were parented by imperfect humans who were given a certain amount of understanding about themselves and have their own baggage. And then they were parenting us in the same thing if we were parents. So we're in understanding this, I think there is this compassion that comes in for those who were part of those formative years for us, they did the best with what they could. At the same time, it doesn't mean that the pain that we experienced wasn't real. It doesn't mean that you may have felt neglected or not heard or dismissed, whatever that was, that eventually led you to think, okay, well, I'm safe if I just do what everyone wants, if I just keep this person happy. But it does help us to understand how it happened, how it got there. And that we are humans as well. We're humans being parented by humans. But as children growing up in these environments, our nervous systems, if we were in these fight or flight modes, they were constantly on. And it was like having a hot fire on a boiling pot of water for years and years. And that becomes this normal state. That became my normal state. I didn't even realize that was my normal state. I didn't realize there was anything different. That's just how I was. I associated being vigilant with part of how I lived. Vigilant about how to fit in, how to be loved, how to do all of that. That was just how I lived. So being in that caretaker mode, the fixer mode, the emotional manager, that translated into later when I was a mom of young ones, totally helpful, right? I had to be those things, the caretaker, the fixer, the emotional manager. But now, as they're aging and getting into their own lives, that's no longer healthy for me. Oh man, it is. Yes, God has, since 2017, especially after I had that huge medical crisis brought on by years of not dealing with any of this, I nearly lost my life to 2 vertebral artery dissections. I've talked about this before on the show, but just if you haven't heard that story, I have an episode, I believe it's episode 125, that talks about that story in more detail. But that was the point in my life where I began looking at these patterns more closely. And so God did that healing. And it was through the things that I lead women through coaching now, through understanding the deeper patterns, through brain priming. If you want to learn more about that whole process, I talked about it in detail in the last episode, which I believe is episode 361. I talked about it in detail about understanding the patterns, understanding the roles of God in it, trusting Him, rewiring the thoughts using brain priming, and then learning some tools, beginning to practice them, not just jumping to, oh, I need to set more boundaries, right? So I did that work. And so for years I thought, okay, right, I'm good. And then God has this ability of showing us and keeping us continually learning. And as they have aged, I've realized, wow, there's still some threads in there of that hyper responsibility that I found as what I thought was me being a good, loving person, or over functioning in a relationship, or over making sure everybody's okay. Is everything good? Are you good? Are you fine? Some of that was because there were times in my life where I felt like there weren't people asking those questions of me. So it's so interesting how we begin to compensate. And the biggest thing that I want you to hear from this is, number one, yes, we need to get in there and do this deeper work to get the healing. Okay? We do. Because we're not just going to magically change. We cannot just make ourselves heal from a cancerous wound on our arm by just putting a little cream on it and saying, okay, it's not cancer, right? We got to get in there and dig the cancer out, sew it back up, and put some healing balm on it to let the skin grow over it again and be healthy. That's the process. But that doesn't mean that there aren't still things to learn and grow in. And this area of understanding how I had associated that overfunctioning to closeness in relationships, that was a big revelation for me. And it's still something that I'm still learning about, because I'm so wanting to make sure that I'm caring for my kids and loving them. But that can look, and that can cause me personally to make some decisions that aren't healthy. That's people pleasing them, right? So like rescuing or fearing like a boundary will create distance in the relationship. It's all kinds of stuff that I'm learning about every day. And so I guess I just want to say that sometimes people pleasing isn't about approval. Sometimes it's about fear of disconnection. And as we have kids who are getting older and they are naturally becoming more independent and disconnecting, that can get really complicated if we have some areas around there that are tender. And so God's message to me throughout this has simply been relax. Relax. Take a deep breath. You're going to be okay. I understand. I know how much you care for them. And I want to help you learn what it means to let go a little bit more and not fall back into a pattern that caused you destruction. I want to show you, if you listen to me and stay relaxed, I will show you how to navigate this and how to not let that fear that can still be triggered if I'm not careful, right? If I'm not aware of it and not using tools and not thinking through what I'm saying. Just like an alcoholic, I can go back if I am not listening to the Lord. He's telling me just very simple things like, it's safe to trust me. It's safe to trust me. You don't have to scan the horizon. You don't have to hold everything together. You don't have to know every outcome. You can stop analyzing. You can stop predicting. You can let me be all those things. And isn't that who he is? He is the one who is aware of everything that's happening in our lives. He is the one who's holding everything together. He is the one who knows every outcome. I need to live in this moment. Let him give me what I need. Let him give me my daily bread, my daily direction for what's next. Just going back to that simple thing. I also want to give you this analogy, which God has had me in for a couple of years, but he's brought it back to this idea of this new phase of living with people pleasing and being healed from it. And that is the idea of an anchor. So if you and I were in a boat in the middle of the ocean, we would put an anchor down and it would anchor to the bottom. Let's assume it's only 30 feet in the middle of the ocean, right? We're not thousands of feet down. But we put an anchor down and let's say we anchor the boat. That night, a storm comes. The anchor allows the boat to stay in one place. Now, the boat is not frozen on that place on the ocean. The boat is going to move around in a circle from the circumference, I guess you would say, of what the anchor is holding us to. But there is that safety. So I can, as I anchor myself in Christ, as I anchor my nervous system in the calm that comes from my own body, learning how to calm it, but in knowing those things, that he is the one who's scanning the horizon for me. He's the one who's got all these things under control. I can let them be who they need to be, that I can surrender. That's my anchor, so that when the storms come, when things shock me, when things are surprising, I'm not worried that my boat is floating around. I can know, hey, there's going to be some bumps on this ship here. We're going to be rocking and rolling a little bit for the next few weeks, and that's okay. That's okay, because my anchor is holding me steady. So, the last thing I want to say about maintenance is that healing doesn't mean that the old pathways completely disappear. I know in the last episode we talked about how when we create these new neurological patterns that are replacing the broken patterns that were there that relate to people pleasing, we're creating new bridges that are strong bridges. But if you've ever broken a bone, let's say you break your leg. If you break your leg and you decide to go running again and you fall down, let's say you're running a marathon or something, chances are if you were to fall down on that same leg, it would break in the same spot because that's a weaker area. So it doesn't mean that there isn't that temptation to return to old patterns. It means that a new pattern is in place that's healthy, but we have to be listening to God about when he's alerting us with these check engine lights, like this might be something that could be a sign of what that is. And we're not going back there, right? And as we begin to become aware of that, we begin to notice these triggers faster and we can return to truth sooner. Hey, it's Alicia. Do you replay conversations long after they're over, or feel responsible for how others are feeling? Or how about this? Say yes when you really just want to say no? If you're stuck in that cycle of people pleasing and feeling responsible for everyone else, you are not alone, and there's a reason that your brain keeps going back to these patterns. That's exactly why I created the People Pleasing Check-In Workbook. It's a simple, self-guided assessment with powerful coaching questions, the kind I ask my clients, to help you understand what's really driving your people pleasing so you can finally see your patterns more clearly, understand what's behind them, and recognize how they're affecting your relationships and everyday peace. Because understanding the patterns is the first step to getting free from people pleasing. If you're tired of the overanalyzing, the ongoing guilt, and the pressure to keep everyone happy, grab the People Pleasing Check-In Workbook and start your path to more peace, healthier relationships, and renewed confidence. Find it at aliciamichelle.com/people-pleasing. That's aliciamichelle.com/people-pleasing. And this is where the importance of having calming rhythms in our lives and the connection with Christ becomes so important, because when our body is calm, it's easier to access wisdom and discernment. And when our body is in fight or flight, it's easier to turn to those old coping patterns. So a big part of this maintenance of healing from people pleasing for me is, am I keeping my overall life in a place where I am not stuck in fight or flight a lot from all these other things? And recently, there have been some things in my life, in my family, in my home that have really kept me wanting to be stuck in fight or flight. And I was realizing, gosh, there's some these other patterns that are coming in. And it's like, you have allowed that fight or flight to become more of a regular rhythm in your life again. And so it's harder for you to make those wise choices again. So we have to keep our bodies, we have to make a commitment to calm and make a commitment to taking care of our bodies so that God can continue to help us make wise choices. And so this isn't about self-help, like replacing Jesus. It's about learning how to align our mind and our body and our spirit and working with how God designed the brain so that we can live fully, like he says in John 10:10. I came so that you can have life and life abundant. Life abundant in this world doesn't mean life perfect. It means abundance. It means good. Perfect will be for heaven. And so not being surprised by the triggers that are there, not being surprised by the fiery arrows that might be thrown at us, but doing our part, committing to ourselves and to Christ to say, as a way of saying thank you, you took me through this. You healed me. You've called me to this higher path. And as part of that thankfulness, I am going to commit to taking care of my soul, to listening to you, doing the things to stay in that place. And so now I can ask these questions when it feels like a trigger is coming for people pleasing. I can ask those questions from a place of wisdom and love. Like when I'd feel a desire to do something for someone else, I can ask myself, am I doing this so that I can feel loved? So funny. This happened to me today as I was about to press record on this episode. My husband has been gone for a couple of days, and there have been some little chores around the house that I've like, you know how in your marriage, like there's certain things that are like, oh, well, that's his job and this is my job. Like just certain things you do. Like my husband's the guy who takes out the trash. I don't typically do that. He kind of does that, or our boys do that. And there were some things like boxes and stuff that were sitting in our foyer that had been sitting there for a couple of weeks. And I was like, ugh, right? And so I thought he's coming home tonight. I'm going to clean that up. I'm going to throw those away. It's trash day. I'm going to do that. And I had to check my spirit because I was like, so am I doing that because I want to be loving and a servant and kind and just doing it? Or am I doing it so that he will say, good job, you're an amazing wife? Am I looking for accolades and am I looking to make him happy so that will make me feel good about myself? And it's just like this check in my spirit, like, what is that about? And so I had to ask myself, no, I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do and because I know it's being kind. And so the biggest check for me when I'm in those situations is if it happens and nobody notices, am I okay with it? Because then I know I did it for God. I didn't do it for anybody else. Then I know in my spirit that I had the right motive with it. It wasn't like, well, they didn't say anything about it. So that's just a really simple but very, common example of checking our spirit to know what is my motive here? And being in that calm state as a maintenance rhythm in my life and a connection with Jesus so that I can ask those kinds of questions. So I want to just say in conclusion that God can rewire these patterns. He has done that in my life. I have been so blessed to work with hundreds and hundreds of women who have had that happen for them as well and who are now living on the maintenance side of things. But I want you to hear that part of what that process is on the other side is a commitment to Jesus and to ourselves of awareness, of honesty, of creating an environment in our life as much as we can, possibly, right? Making a commitment to being calm and to taking care of our bodies and spending time with the Lord, right? It's kind of like if you were to work out and lose 100 pounds, you have a changed life afterwards. You change your diet. You change what you do every day. You don't go back to eating 3 Twinkies a day and 4 Starbucks drinks and a whole pizza every evening. That's not how you live your life. Your new habits support this dramatic change in your life. It doesn't mean that you don't feel tempted to go back to that life sometimes, but you have been so entrenched and you're doing certain habits in your life to keep that up that it's like, that's not even me anymore. There is so much freedom and joy in that on the other side. So I want to say that if this episode resonated with you, if you felt like she gets me, she gets this story, I have a similar story, I want to have a story like hers where she's gotten past a lot of this stuff and she's done that work and she's now living on the maintenance side of it, then reach out to me. I love helping women get freedom in this area. And I would love to talk to you to find out, is this working together in the people-pleasing mindset makeover? Is that helpful? Is that where you're at? Is that what you need? So if you go to aliciamichelle.com/coaching, you will see on that page information about the makeover, what it's like, what we do. There's 8 one-on-one coaching sessions with me where I lead you through a process like we talked about in the last episode of that transformation on the inside and then learning the new tools and the behaviors on the outside and practicing them. I walk you through that and customize it to what the Lord is calling us to do for you. If that is resonating for you, I am, at the time of this recording, which is in May of 2026, gathering the first group of these women for this specific round of the People Pleasing Mindset Makeover, I am gathering a group of women to start June 15th to go through this process. And I can't take a ton of people, of course, because I'm doing this work one-on-one. And I understand that this work isn't for everybody. But if you are committed to that idea of, I want to live on the other side of this, I don't want to live like this anymore, I want you to know that it's not going to just be, I'm not going to lie to you and say, just believe this about yourself and be different. It's going to take a transformation inside. And that transformation takes some work and commitment and investment. It takes knowing someone who's been on that path, who has the training and the expertise to lead you through it, and who can help you one-on-one with it. That's why I wanted to create the work I did before in the Christian Mindset Makeover. It was a course that had an option for some group coaching, but I want to target this work down to just people pleasing, because that's the thing that women talk to me about a lot. And I really think that coaching one-on-one with this really tender topic can be so powerful. So if that's resonating, please join me and apply. It's really simple to apply. You'll go to the page, you'll click on the button. It'll take you to a place where you can book a call with me and we can talk more about, is this a fit for you? Is this something that is God's next step for you? So I look forward to hearing from you if that is resonating with you. Okay, friends, thanks for letting me share more about my story. I hope it encouraged you, gave you a real look at what could be. Not this Pollyanna, everything is perfect, right? But hope and encouragement and reality of how God gives us the transformation, but is still shaping us. Take care. I'll see you back here next week. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for joining me today. For full show notes and helpful next step resources, visit aliciamichelle.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd be honored if you'd leave a 5-star rating and review. Thanks for being here. I'll see you back next week.